Namaste, Jai Hind, and welcome to yet another edition of Take 3. I'm Anand Narasimhan. With me, Zaka Jacob and Rahul Shivshankar. First up, viewers, what we're going to speak about is what's happening in the neighborhood. Now, they liberated themselves from a nation with whom they are going to try and be conjoined twins. I'm quite gobsmacked that we are allowing this in our neighborhood, Zaka. So let's just start around and say, have we failed as a nation to manage our neighbors, especially the friendlies?
Well, look, failed is a
We're talking Bangladesh,
pretty strong word because obviously, I believe these go around in cycles, right? I mean, politics in the country, in the neighborhood, it's cyclical. Right now, India is having a tough time in Bangladesh, primarily because of no particular reason, but I think because the person who's the interim caretaker, chief there, Professor Yunus, who by the way had a great stellar record till before he became this interim chief. I think I'm convinced now that he has a stridently anti-India agenda. I mean, he's avowedly anti-India. Now, having said that, did India make a mistake or two? Did India miss a trick or two? I think the fact that when the coup happened in August last year, and obviously Hasina was the most pro-India leader that Bangladesh has had in its history. I think she was more pro than her father, the late Mujibur Rahman. India had no choice but to give her some form of asylum. But my understanding is that at that point, when that decision was taken, it was meant to be a temporary one, right? No one expected, certainly the powers that be in Delhi did not expect her to be here in Delhi in a safe house in Chanakyapuri, a year and a half after the coup happened. And as long as she's in a safe house in Delhi, I don't think New Delhi's relationship with Dhaka
No, but then
can become
that's
normal.
a failure for New Delhi because
Of
if
course,
the
of course.
the Americans and the Chinese can continue to patronize those who have been but continue to engage with other nations and other entities, they have been able to. My question is, how did we not even get a fig of a hint that something like this is brewing? Were we also clueless in Nepal? And who are these entities, and how is it that the Americans are able to orchestrate whatever they want and however they want in nations which are in our neighborhood and we are none the wiser? One. Secondly, if the intent is to pursue a radical agenda, Rahul Shivshankar, then why is it that we have not been as a nation been able to check that? Where have we missed a trick here?
Well, look, countries and their people choose their own destinies at the end of the day. There's only that much you could do. It's a bit like saying, why didn't the West anticipate that Putin would walk into Ukraine? For 10 years, it was looking pretty obvious that would happen, right? So I think a lot of people perhaps knew that she was skating on thin ice. They just didn't know where the ice was going to break and when. Look, Islamism is not going to stop. The Islamization of Bangladesh, there was an interregnum where there was a hiatus. And that happened because you had a more pragmatic leader in Sheikh Hasina. Otherwise, even under Sheikh Hasina, there were enough incidents where Hindus were being targeted and other religious minorities were under attack. So Islamism is a gradual process that has taken root in Bangladesh over a period of time, pretty much after they split from Pakistan. Remember, this is an entity that was found, again, in reaction to, the Hindu population in that particular part of the world. We know the origins of Bangladesh. And it was religious. So let's not pretend that sort of feeling of, we are an Islamic entity bound by an ummah and there's the other that salutes to Medina. Let's not brush that under the carpet. Yes, there was an attempt under different prime ministers, leaders, dictators to try and, at some level, take a larger view, but Indians have been leaving Bangladesh for a long time.
Yeah.
We know about that. And they've had a constitutional change also where they've endorsed themselves as a Islamic Republic. And that constitution, if you read, makes it very clear who the bad people are, which is religious minorities.
Yeah.
It's pretty, they're second or third grade citizens in their country. So I don't think you can even if you were to say, okay, Sheikh Hasina, I'm sorry, we don't want to give you refuge, go away. It's not going to appease anybody there. They are already in the clutches of Islamism. It was only a matter of time.
The religious denomination, the thought process, the presence of radicals, all of that is understood. It's not that. Look at Nepal, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Bhutan. these are entities and these are strategically important nations, even Afghanistan, nations where we should have been so invested that there is never an anti-India narrative that is allowed to be fed and bred there. You may have a strong Islamic narrative within there, but the fact that India is a friend, that India is not somebody you need to harm, and India is not somebody which will ever harm you, is something which should have been entrenched into the polity, people, diplomacy, etc. That's been allowed. I'm just saying.
Let's take the example of Afghanistan. There's a structural issue there. Why was India not in the scheme of things for the longest time in Afghanistan? Because India earlier had backed the Northern Alliance. We backed the king, and then after that the Northern Alliance. So we were always anathema for the Taliban, and vice versa. It's only now that Muttaqi has come to India, right? We've not had any kind of formal arrangement with the Taliban because the history is that the Taliban was a creation at the end of the day of the ISI, of Pakistan and the deep state, meant exclusively at that time when it happened in the 1970s to use them against the Soviets, to chase the Soviets out, obviously funded by the CIA and all of that.
With the CIA.
So India did not have an in there because it was always, begotten to the ISI and to the Pakistani deep state. It's now changing.
No, but Zakir, what I'm trying to tell you is the Afghans were always Afghans, right? They were various tribes.
Yeah, of
but
course.
point is that as a nation in this region, if I want to be treated as a big brother, I need to be able to engage, learn from the Americans and the Chinese if you have to learn statecraft, or learn from Chanakya, or learn from our own people who have understood.
Leave alone the Taliban. They used to be for the longest time
with everybody, right?
A banned terrorist organization. Even in Bangladesh, because Hasina was so close to India and India was so close to Hasina, for the 15 years that she was in power, we had no channels of communication with the BNP. I mean, it's a different matter that the BNP leadership, went off into exile in London, and they were not really, front and center of the politics there. Now we're establishing channels with Tariq Rahman and
what
other
I'm trying to
leaders
say
and
is
so on.
that this is something which should have always happened in the parallel. The other thing is that Sheikh Hasina should have been warned in time. When she went to Beijing, we knew that the thrusts and the push were coming because there was a push for that Saint Martin Island. Were we not aware that this was going to happen? What did we do to try and ensure that we
Of course we were aware because Biden met Sheikh Hasina in Delhi at the G20. It was Prime Minister Modi who took her up to him, and that's where the ice broke.
But how do we secure our own waters? This is happening in our own backyard. This quest for a Saint Martin. What I'm asking is that are we as a nation not even, forget being obsessed about what's happening internally, are we looking at only one small pinprick on this side and not looking at the larger picture and not creating a diplomatic outreach militarily, politically, or via foreign service, however it is, in such a way that there are always back channels there to ensure that our interests are secured?
So see, look, again, my what is intriguing to me is that Yunus, doing all of this supposedly at the behest of the Americans, for him to be saying that, Bangladesh is the only non-landlocked part in this world, and if China wants to sell, then we'll just take over all of Northeast India. We can hold, Northeast India hostage and so on. Ultimately, if he's an East Coast liberal, why is he speaking the language of China? Are you telling me then that the Chinese and the Americans are in on this? That's
exactly
thing.
what I'm trying to say. Why is it that we've not been able to crack? How is it that the Pakistanis are getting a war chest in 1971 from the Chinese while they got patent tanks from the Americans?
Look, these countries are defining their nationalism in reaction to the main hegemonistic power
in the region.
In the region, which is India. All of them are culturally aligned, moored to India. This was the Indian subcontinent. This was not, just a sliver of land that we are talking about. This was one time was all part of the British Empire. So when these nations have evolved and they have been insecure about their own nationhood, they've had to define it. Pakistan, on some flimsy corner of the earth, right, is defining its own self. How does it do it? In an anti-Indian trope. The Sri Lankans and we had a problem precisely for this reason, because the North was seen as hypothecated an extension of the Indian mainland. So they had a civil war brewing. India could not get into that in any way. When we did, it was a disaster. Then you look at the East, where you have Bangladesh. Bangladesh is landlocked, courtesy whom? Except for one part, courtesy whom? India. Its artery, its juggernaut, is linked, its umbilical cord is linked to India. Are you telling me that anyone who wants to define themselves as a Muslim nation is going to look to India and can survive that?
but,
I don't think so.
no,
Then you look at Nepal. Nepal also has the same problem.
Rahul, what I'm
Nepal
trying to-
defined itself recently under the Maoists. So, these countries have chosen
They have
to
not.
play,
They were
to play
they were
the
entities.
great game.
Rahul, what I'm trying to say is there were entities who influenced them to choose thus. Why didn't we influence them to
I'm trying
choose
to say
otherwise?
because,
the
because
other
see,
thing
it's
is,
no water of anyone's
The
back
other-
if you align with America. It has absolutely no ramifications.
what I'm trying to
but
tell you-
domestic politics, you know what people will say? Oh, you guys have a colonial hangover. You are still, and this is one of the reasons why, and I'll tell you, in Southeast Asia, there's a massive backlash. And we have to be very careful because we were seen as the original.
No, Rahul, what I'm trying to say is the Americans are on the far side of this earth,
Yeah,
right?
so-
But they are meddling
But
here.
what I'm trying to say is
the
that
Chinese,
it costs nothing.
The Chinese
for
are many
for the
thousand miles
Pakistanis
and
or for-
mountain deserts on the other side.
Because you're not
but they
getting
are
my
meddling
point.
in this region
But you're
because
not
they
getting
have a
my
vision.
point. Anand, you're not getting my point. They have to define themselves. Their nation's sense of nationhood is an insecure one.
Correct.
What distinguishes them? Why
There's-
shouldn't they be part of India?
What I'm trying to tell you is that their sense of nation should not be done with identifying India as a hegemony. If they are
But they do because we talk about Akhand Bharat.
So let's we don't talk so openly. What
No,
I'm
do
trying-
we accept?
Well,
Do we
here-
accept
no,
the partition of the
just
subcontinent?
hear
We
me.
don't. I
Just
don't
hear
think
me.
many
Just-
Indians
just-
do.
Just hear me
No,
out.
so there's always
There
a
is a
political
geostrategic aspect.
incentive. For example, let's say the PMLN and the PPP. There's always a political incentive to come across as the anti-India party.
Exactly.
But I would flip Rahul's argument on its head, and I think you have a point. It's also our failure.
Good, that's
It
see,
is
what I'm-
absolutely
what-
nobody stopped you from engaging with
what am I
the
trying to tell
Maoists
you?
in
Hear-
Nepal
hear-
or with the
hear this
BNP
out.
in
Hear this out.
Bangladesh.
Why
How
is
do we
it-
know that we haven't?
No. One
See,
minute.
we've
We
had a
have
history
after
with
they've come to
Khaleda
power.
Zia
Now,
was in
can I-
power.
can I have my
Khaleda
say?
Zia
Can
was
I have
in
my say?
power.
One second.
We didn't have any diplomatic problems with her. Yes, it was a difficult.
No.
One would say.
Yeah.
No,
It was a
just
very
one
difficult
second.
tentative. It was
Can
a
I have-
tentative
Can I have my say?
relationship.
My point is, see,
But we tried.
whether it is Trump, whether it is the Democrats or the Republicans, the Americans have an underlying think tank which ensures a continuity in policy, right? Or no matter whatever is said on the surface of it. The Chinese, whoever is head of the Politburo or of the CCP, they have a continuity in policy or thought process on their strategy. The Pakistanis, whoever is the army chief, whoever is the president, prime minister, doesn't matter. There is an entity which ensures there is a continuity in policy, irrespective of the setbacks, they recalibrate, right? With Bharat, do we have a thought? Do we have a set underlying entity which ensures a continuity in our policy, irrespective of which political party or leader is at the side? I'm asking you.
To some extent, yes.
Now,
Like for example,
let me just complete. Let me just complete. 1 second. I'm just saying there is an Aini airbase which we fought hard across governments in Tajikistan. Which had a strategic importance because that was the only airbase that India could command on the other side of the Taklamakan corridor and Badakhshan region. Okay, now that corridor is today the gateway for the Chinese to enter into Afghanistan.
Yeah.
The Chinese and the Russians have been coveting it for 25 years. We have quietly let that go. The Tajiks did not allow us to use that airbase even for Operation Sindoor. For the last 1 year, it's dead. Now, I'm just saying, forget Prime Minister Modi, forget Manmohan Singh, forget anybody. At the end of the day, the interest is of Bharat, right?
Yeah, of course.
Should Bharat not have ensured that that airbase is never given
How do
away?
you ensure,
No,
man?
no, no,
Beyond
no,
a
I said
point,
because there is no
sometimes-
thought process.
These are sovereign
sometimes-
countries making
There is
sovereign
no, no,
decisions
No, there is a
tomorrow.
thought process.
hang on.
There was a thought
Sometimes-
process. There was
sometimes
an entity. Why did we allow the Chinese to move in there? Why did we allow the Russians to move in there?
Sometimes, as the old American adage goes, you carry a big stick. Sometimes it's just a consequence of how big your checkbook is. And frankly,
That's exactly-
the reality is we are a country.
No,
who's
actually, on these 2 points, let me just
I
inject.
absolutely think
Checkbook,
so.
hang on. What is checkbook diplomacy in a different way got? For example, China.
No. Today,
Where is
the
China?
preeminent power
Where
in
is
this
China
region?
even in Pakistan today? Who is singing hosannas of who?
Please understand.
Is she
Please
being given the
understand.
Nobel
Tell me
Prize?
one entity.
Recommendation.
Tell me one entity that
Pakistanis are
all
busy.
these nations,
No, hang on, just a minute.
all these
just a minute.
nations
I
without
want to
fighting a
ask you.
war fear.
Sir,
one
let
entity.
me.
That's the
let
Chinese.
me-
Why
let
do they
me-
fear the Chinese if they're not fought a war with them?
It's just the size of their economy.
Allow me 1
It's the
second.
size,
Allow me
no?
1 second, sir. Allow me 1 second. With all these nations, we have a balance of trade in our favor. It's not as if those people. So we also have if you say the Chinese are a great bunch of investors, so are we in their economies. But I'm trying to explain to you, there's a fundamental reason. Their nation, their sense of nationhood has to be defined. They can only do it in
Nepal
relation
was
with
the only
India.
Hindu nation,
Otherwise,
and we just sat by the sidelines when it just gave away its Hindu identity.
we didn't sit on the sidelines.
Why didn't we
sit on the
why didn't we
sidelines?
ensure
We've
that
engaged
doesn't
people,
happen?
but they chose to define themselves in a different way.
If Bangladesh's current generation believes that India was responsible for the partition from East Pakistan, from West Pakistan, then we have allowed
It's
that
also our
revisionism.
failure, yeah.
We have allowed
I
that
think it's our
revisionism
failure.
to happen.
I mean,
how is it that liberation war was forgotten by the current three generations of Bangladesh? Why isn't it that we have ensured? Why isn't it that we have ensured with the Sri Lankans, be it Sinhala or Tamil, that India has always been their friend?
So,
They're never been their enemy.
again, I go back to the
Are
point
you
that I was
telling me
making
that
earlier.
India,
one
hang on,
second,
just a minute.
one second. See,
When in 2014, when the Prime Minister took oath, what was the first thing he did? Who attended his oath taking?
all the neighboring countries.
Why did he do it? It was an outreach. For 2 years, he invested in Pakistan, my dear. He flew to a wedding ceremony on the way from Afghanistan, landed up in Mr. Sharif's farmhouse, sang hosannas to his niece or something like that, who was getting married.
Yeah.
And what did he get in return? Every dispensation when they have come to power in this country has invested in Pakistan.
Rahul?
No, we've
No,
invested in Pakistan.
but
Would you
Rahul,
disagree with me?
Rahul, like I'm saying,
what
it's not about being the nice
do you
guy.
disagree with me?
It's about being the good guy who can be really bad.
No,
what do you want us to invade them?
I want these nations to fear us.
Forget about Pakistan.
I want these
forget
nations
about
to fear
Pakistan.
Bharat also
What
while
about-
they respect
If they
it.
fear you,
What
my dear
about-
friend,
They
you
fear us
lost them.
No, they need to fear
What
us
about-
while they respect us. They
what-
fear the Americans, they fear the Chinese, but they also respect the Chinese. They listen to them, right? It's the same thing. We've got to get into a space there, especially in our neighborhood.
They start
there is a
fearing you,
peculiar-
the
if we
moment
don't
they start
showcase-
fearing you,
if we don't
that is the
showcase
end.
ourselves that as
Sir,
we are the
none
benign,
of these countries,
we are the benign.
Okay, you can shout me down, but none
no,
of
but
these
the Bahubali-
countries share a border with these countries. India is seen as a country that is in a position tomorrow to walk across the border and finish
It
them
is
off.
not seen
co-opt
that way.
them.
It is not seen that way.
Of course it is.
Has
Why
to be
do you
seen
think
that
Nepal
way.
is
If
trying
it
to
was-
define its border with India?
If it was seen that way, the Nepal is trying to define its border
Pakistan
with India.
doesn't see you like that.
No, at the insistence
Pakistan
of the
doesn't
Chinese.
see you as a-
at the
as a
insistence
country
of the
that will split
Chinese,
it in two
whom
and
we
cold
have
start.
allowed them to seed in
What are we
Nepal.
saying?
We allowed Maoism to seed itself in Nepal.
So,
we allowed
you know,
these entities to come
the-
into. We should not have allowed them to come into Bangladesh. That's how strong we should have been in our statecraft. Is my point of view.
My point is, let's leave the Pakistan question aside because there's a fundamental issue of terrorism, which is the central issue I believe.
what
between
is it
India and
born
Pakistan.
out of?
No, let's leave.
irreconcilable
Give me 30
civilizational
seconds.
narrative, right?
Give me 30 seconds, please. Let's leave Pakistan aside. Nothing stopped the Indian establishment from having good ties with all political players in Nepal or in Bangladesh or in Sri Lanka or in Maldives. In Sri Lanka, for example, we were seen as the anti-Rajapaksa party. When Rajapaksa was thrown out,
Yeah.
I remember he called out the name of a officer who was in the Indian High Commission at that time and said, this man is the one who is responsible for my ouster. And then we were seen as the Ranil party. And obviously, when they went through the crisis, the economic crisis, India was the country that bailed them out. Today we have a dispensation there which has come on an anti-India rhetoric.
Yeah.
Although, the rhetoric there is way less compared to Bangladesh and stuff.
Yeah.
But my point is, I think there's a degree of look at Maldives.
No, but one second.
Moizu
In Sri Lanka, the leader there now, though a Marxist, etc., has been very pragmatic. He's in fact shut the door on the Chinese. He hasn't slammed it shut, but he's certainly shut it. He's saying that, look, we have to balance, and he has come and engaged our leadership. We have made an extra effort with him also, and that has paid off. Please understand that there is an issue here. You are the regional hegemon, and these countries have been born out of a reaction to you. Their cultures are exactly the same. In one particular case, even their religion is the predominant religion is the same. They are trying to define their sense of nationhood. They can't be seen to be co-opted with you.
See, this is what I'm trying to say. The fact is that we believe to be perceived as a hegemon in the wrong sense. We have to have the ability to influence these nations in a way that it protects our strategic interests and also the subcontinent. We cannot have entities who don't belong in this region to dictate terms in our neighborhood to cause trouble to us. If we have to become a strong and powerful nation, we have to do this. We should have done it
So
in the
how do
last
you do it?
35 40
hang on,
years.
how do you do it?
There-
Do you
no,
think to
there-
book a conference room and
No,
have a long
no,
chat
no,
with
no,
everybody
there
across
has to
the
be a
party?
continu- there
Across
has
the
to be a-
party. No, hang on.
no,
Across
there
all the
has-
party
there-
lines, it'll
there
happen.
has to be there has
The
to be a
reason why-
continuity
no, no,
in this
the
aspect
reason
that this
why-
is of strategic
no, no,
interest
the-
for
the-
anybody who
the-
comes to
the
power to
reason why-
mobilize.
Bangladesh and
reason
Pakistan
why-
define themselves
No,
as a
Rahul,
polity
this
in
is beyond,
complete,
this
reason-
is beyond
complete
politics.
opposition
This is
to your.
statecraft. This
But
is
that was not the case
statecraft
for
that has
15
to
years when
exist.
Hasina was in power. It was not.
I'll tell you
Not
why.
at all. There
Because
was no
I'll tell you
anti-India
why. I'll tell
sentiment
you
there.
why. Because she was a pragmatically. It came down a lot to
Okay.
her. The choices that she was
No,
making.
I think
politics.
here's the
One
thing.
politics.
She
Here's
was
the
a
country.
pragmatic politician who realized that the specter of Islamism was going to
Bharat
consume this
should have-
country, and she reached out.
No,
See,
Bharatiya
you
Bharatiya
had-
leaders,
you had
Bharatiya
several-
leaders, Bharatiya
We-
entities should have engaged with the BNP in front of
We are-
the Awami League
we are
while
talking
engaging with the
about-
Awami League.
No,
Engage with Mahinda
one
Rajapaksa
second.
while engaging with Ranil
what-
Wickremesinghe. That's
we are
statecraft.
talking
That's how
about-
we got to
We're
do
talking
it.
about this in a week when supposedly the most powerful man in the world,
Is
Mr.
in
Trump,
Malaysia.
came to Southeast Asia. He's met with the leaders of all these countries and signed all kinds of deals. The moment he's left, ASEAN has renewed its free trade agreement with China. Why? Because it's a hell of a lot of $1 billion that they're invested in that trade
Yeah.
relationship. So ultimately, it depends on what you bring to the table, the heft, the weight.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm sorry to say this, I can't find a better analogy. The checkbook that you bring to the table. It's as simple as
It's
that.
not just the checkbook.
I mean, it's a crude way of saying it.
The investment has to be not just economic. The investment has to be strategic. The investment has to be seeped into the narrative of these nations, which should never be skewed away from us. We have allowed other nations to skew that narrative, revisionist in terms of entity. I'm not saying that what you're saying that there are these nations have come because they want to culturally define themselves individually. We could have done that in such a way that they continue to protect Bharat's strategic interests.
Sir, we have
That's what
three
I'm saying.
Tyros sitting around a table. There are Mandarins who have spent 50 years sitting in South Block. Do you think it wouldn't have struck them? Do you
don't
think
know.
they're all morons sitting
don't
there
know.
and doing
I
nothing?
don't know.
Come on.
I don't know.
I
Sometimes,
asked, I
sometimes
don't know.
let's defer.
I
Let's
asked,
defer to a little bit of
I don't know.
practicality
I don't
also.
know. I don't know.
And there
Or-
is some
or
theory.
did
I mean, you know, we
no,
guys
no,
seem
or
to
did
be
it
like
strike
the
them, but
fount
they
of
did
all knowledge.
they did nothing because they were asked. They were not allowed. They were not empowered enough to do something
wrap
about
with
it.
this. So I
How
asked
would I
a career foreign service officer recently who's retired about this whole Nepal thing. It was right after the whole Gen Z thing. And the whole clamor was, oh, India was caught napping. India didn't have a clue. So he turned around very coolly and he said, okay, supposing we knew, what do you think we could have done?
Exactly.
So that was his answer.
I mean,
I'm just saying.
when
I'm just
a
saying.
people rise
I'm
up,
just saying
that
what he
is-
said.
when a
Supposing
people
we knew,
rise up-
what could we have done?
No,
When
so
a people
that's
rise
where
up,
I would have said.
when a people rise up, what can you do fundamentally?
the idea
What could
is-
their own state do?
No, the idea
What
is-
could the Americans do?
The idea is that
What could the Chinese do?
Could
Since
we
you
have-
suggest that the Chinese had it all set up there, the chessboard in Nepal, why did they let
Was
their hang
25
on, why did they let their loyalists fall in this coup? Why couldn't they have stopped them? Such a powerful country, the huge checkbook. They should have been able to stop even the coup in Sri Lanka.
But the issue, no, no, but the
Rajapaksa was
issue
kicked
is
out
the
on his
issue is
backside,
this.
sir.
Rahul,
And where were the Chinese
Rahul,
then?
Rahul, the
Oh,
issue
come
is
on, give me that.
Rahul, the
Answer
issue
me
is
that
this. No,
question.
no,
Don't say
Rahul,
no,
Rahul,
no,
Rahul,
Chinese
the
don't
issue
care
is
about
this.
the
No, no,
government.
the
The
issue
Chinese
is
care about the
I'm
territory.
The issue
asking
is-
you
the
a
issue is-
question.
Chinese
I'm
care
asking you a
about
question. No, no,
political
you are
territory.
saying that we should have been
They
able
don't care about
to
Nepal or
preempt.
Nepali. They
We
don't
should have
care.
been able to
They just
preempt
care about
regime
territory.
change in Bangladesh.
No, no,
They
The
just care
Chinese
about
couldn't stop
territory.
it in
They don't
Nepal,
care
should
about
stop it in
Nepal or
South
Nepali
the
Asia.
issue
people.
is, the
They
issue
care
is,
about territory.
in a year's time, the Chinese would have built leverage with whoever the next prime
Yeah,
minister
yes.
of Nepal is going to be, perhaps even more than we have and we could have. I think that's the issue.
That's the
Look,
and also
when
the
the
leverage.
wheel turns, it turns. You have to respect the sentiment of a nation,
Yeah.
okay, and its people. Nothing stops it. There are many things that were happening in Latin America all through where the Americans were engaged actively propping regimes, despite that some of those regimes have collapsed. When a country makes up its mind to sort of strike and do what it has to, it will do it.
Are you encouraging
Yeah.
Gen Z
No, no, no.
protests?
No, no, no.
I'm
What
not
I'm saying-
encouraging anybody.
what I'm saying
just
is,
saying
let
we
a
don't have
country-
those conditions in our country.
That's
We're lucky.
exactly
We're
what-
an open
no, no,
democracy.
that's
You
exactly
sound
what
like
I'm saying.
certain
No, no, no.
politicians.
We're a very
viral
beautiful
but that's
democracy. We have the ballot that brought about social change in every generation, including Gen Z generation.
Correct. No, I totally agree with all of that. The point is that nations should be able to read this upheaval and say, okay, let this happen. Once the storm blows over,
but how
what
do you know
next?
that hasn't
How do I
happened?
engage? we should not have the Pakistani general sharing those
You can
pictures
stop
with
them. You should
Mohammedans.
tell them, sorry, sir,
No,
I'm taking
just
out
saying
the
that's
gas
not-
from your
that is-
aircraft and it's not going to fly across the
that is not state.
I mean, we'll also be doing that.
As a nation, if you want to be seen strong, then those who are weak should remain weak, or they should not be allowed to flex their muscle in front of us. That's my point. That's all. Anyway, engaging conversation. We had other issues to speak about, but as usual, we just run over this. Thank you very much, Jets. Thank you.